Hey there, welcome back to the Win a Pageant podcast. I'm your coach, Alicia Darby. Now, this episode features a client of mine who agreed to 3 specific things: to be coachable, to be vulnerable, and to have her coaching session recorded and published in order to help you. So I know that a lot of women who haven't had pageant coaching before don't really know what to expect or how much can you really even get done in 30 minutes. So this client of mine agreed to have her session recorded in order to show you what gets done and how it gets done during a virtual coaching session. Okay, so I want you to listen to this call from 2 different perspectives. First of all, I want you to think, could pageant coaching, especially virtually, even be something that could help you in your pageant prep? I want you to be thinking about that. At the end of the video, I'll tell you how you could make that a reality for you. The second thing that I really want you to pay attention to is I want you to think the things that I'm sharing with her, the coaching that I'm giving her, how can you apply that coaching to your own pageant prep, okay? What are the things that she's learning in this and the skills that she's developing and the strategy that she's learning? How can you apply that to yourself? I'm so grateful that this client allowed me to record this call because I know a lot of the things that she learned during this call will support you in your pageant prep. So sit back with an open mind, maybe get a notepad and a pen handy because a lot of this coaching is going to apply to you too, all right? Enjoy. Tell me, Rebecca, how can I help you?
I'm totally new to pageants. And so I live in Vermont. I'm going to do the Mrs. Vermont in July.
Yeah. Nice. Okay.
But I feel like sort of the fashion stuff and the makeup stuff, like you can pretty much, Google or YouTube your way through that. It's really, I feel like if I can own my intro and sort of own my platform statement, that's where I might get hung up. And so just some help with those things, I guess.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. Well, first, welcome to the pageant industry.
Thanks.
You're going to have a blast. At least I hope so. I have. So let's talk a bit about, well, first of all, what is required for your intro and for your platform? Like, are you thinking specifically like they're giving you a moment on stage where you're going to have to deliver that, or you're just thinking in general?
I was more thinking in general. I am actually not really sure what the requirements are. We were supposed to have like an orientation session in May, and so I don't know if that will happen or not. Okay. So it was more just like, I'm probably going to need this. So
yes. Yeah, you're right. So you're like, well, let's get ahead of the game. Cool.
Yeah.
So, all right. So tell me a little bit about your platform as it is now.
So I don't know that platform is like a required thing.
For your pageant, I don't think that it is.
Yeah.
It's the Miss America system, right?
I think
or Mrs. America system.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's required, technically.
But it sounds like it's kind of important to have.
Yes.
So one of the things, the bio that I sent you was for a document that I created. It's like it's somewhere between probably 10 and 15 pages. And it's a guide for helping women who've experienced miscarriage sort of learn to love their body again. Because one of the things that happens is that you feel so betrayed by your body. And so that I thought is something that I can maybe expand on.
Yeah. Okay. This is good.
I worked with someone who helped me put it together, and then I've sent it to various other people, but I think it probably could be expanded on and distributed more widely. So that's sort of what I was thinking.
That's awesome.
Going with.
Well, I love it. That's brilliant. How are you currently distributing it right now?
I mostly do direct email. There's a national website of support group leaders, and I am mostly doing sort of essentially cold calling in email form with them. So it's not been terribly successful.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we're gonna build that out. So you are a nurse, right? And you've been doing that for many years, over a decade now. Yeah, that's so cool. That's great. How have things been with all of this? Have you been called in a lot? Are you overextended your hours, or how's it been for you?
So right now in Vermont, we're like most of the Northeast, we're sort of in a lull. So we're really ramping up. And I work for a tiny hospital, but I feel like they're really well prepared.
Good.
And their communication has been really good. So,
good.
I just I have some previous ICU experience. Right now I'm working in the emergency room. So I just put myself on the list we don't typically take ICU patients. Yeah. So I've just put myself on the list in the anticipation that we will be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you for doing that. Everybody Vermont thanks you, because that, I know, truly, because that is like a gift that, and I know everybody's kind of saying like, oh, well, like our nurses are superheroes, but actually it is true, because you are putting yourself in harm's way and trusting your own immunity and trusting your own training and your own procedures in the hospital, that those things will keep everybody strong. And I trust that they will. So thank you for that, Rebecca. Yeah.
You're welcome.
So tell me about some of the things that you do, because I'm thinking through, and I'm going to say this for your benefit, but also for those kind of listening in terms of process. So I'm going to start thinking about how can we get this guide into more hands. And then once we know how we're going to do that, we'll figure out how are we going to say that we're doing that? Like, how are we going to communicate it and market it? But to do that, I want to think about, because you said you're doing kind of the cold calling thing, reaching out to individuals in your contact list. But I want to also think about what other skill sets you have that we might be able to leverage to get this thing out. So you mentioned to me earlier that through your bio, that you are a gardener and a fitness enthusiast. Can you talk to me also about other like community things you're involved in, other creative ways that you express yourself? Like, what are some, just off the top of your head, what are some other things that make up who you are?
One of the things that I love that I had prior to all of this wasn't going to have the opportunity to do was coach Girls on the Run. So that's really fun.
Oh, okay.
Have you heard of Girls on the Run?
Yes, I have. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's a cool thing.
So it's a national organization that has a really strong presence in Vermont.
Okay.
So I've been doing that a couple of years. My 10-year-old has played hockey since she was 10, so involved with the local hockey league. And then my 7-year-old is just sort of deciding what she wants to do. So my husband and I coached T-ball last year. So those are the kind of sort of pretty things that I do.
Yeah, that's cool. And so 2 kids, 10 and 7 years old?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, and then now tell me about the guide itself. So you mentioned it's like a 15-page document. How is it organized? Is it in chapters? Is it certain things that people need to do? Is it like a planner? Like how is it organized?
It's organized. It sort of starts with kind of my personal story, why I felt this was needed, and then it is in sections of like, how to sort of convince yourself to exercise, why journaling is helpful, eating well when you just feel like you don't want to get out of bed, like those. It's organized in sections like that, and it's not super long. It's meant to be sort of like easy to digest for people who are struggling. So it's not terribly long, but
yes. Okay, cool. This is great. So how many of those, for lack of a better word, I'm going to call them tips. But so you mentioned the exercise, journal, eating healthy. Approximately how many of those are in this guide?
Let me see if I can find it. Okay. It's been a while since I looked at it. I did update a couple of things, but I didn't go through the whole thing. Just updated what I needed to update.
Yeah. Well, while you're doing that, I'm going to ask you also, like, have you done public speaking before, or do you have a social media presence? Are those things that you're interested in?
I did for a while, for about 18 months, I did like the multi-level marketing thing, and just kind of decided it wasn't for me. Actually, public speaking is something that I would really like to do. And kind of see pageantry as maybe being able to help me do that.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Keep looking for that. Oh yeah. Do you found it?
Yeah. So there are let's see. So that's my story. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's about 8.
Okay, cool. What are the ones that are like the most shocking? Like, give me some that are like, wow, really? Like, that's interesting. I wonder how that works, you know? Can you name off a couple of those?
I think gratitude is hard for people who are, I think that's really hard.
Yes, that's good. That's a good one. Okay. So here's a thought that I have for you, especially because public speaking is something that you want to pursue. Actually, before I go to that, is there anything else that you are wanting to get from the pageant experience? Because I brought up public speaking, but maybe there's something else that you're like, actually what I really want to do is have this leverage me to get somewhere else. Have you thought through that?
I think that was basically it. There you are. I lost you for a minute. One of the questions on the paperwork is like, why do you want to do a pageant? And that was sort of the reason that came to my mind. I didn't actually fill that answer out because I felt like I couldn't be articulate enough about it. But, that was, I think, really the thing that came to mind.
That's great. Okay. We're going to address that today so that you can feel confident with that as well. So, okay. So the thought that I'm having for you is, and the way that I teach this is we look at platform, and platform is kind of like, what are you standing on? What do you represent? You know, what will be the vehicle that gets you into the media and into like, what are you going to talk about all year? But what I do is I take my clients through, which I'm going to walk you through, which you've already started, even if you didn't know, you've kind of already started this, which is like platform. I say it's like platform on steroids. So we add a bunch of stuff to it and we pump it up so that it's not just a platform. It's not just an organization. It's not just a thing, but now it's a legacy that it requires you to bring it to life. But then after you give up your title, it survives on its own. So it's sustainable beyond your reign, you know? That's what a true legacy is that it lives beyond you. So what this guide could do and what you're able to create with this guide, we wanted to do something that it can then eventually live on its own, right? So that you don't have to cold call and send emails and things like that, right? We want to get it to be at a place where people can find this work and soak it up and enjoy it and benefit from it, even if you are 3 years after you give up your title, right? So one way of doing this is, and I should also mention that this is going to happen in stages. It's not like we just jump to the top. Like we got to start somewhere, because as you begin and as you take steps, you're going to learn first what's working for you and for others, and you're also going to learn what's not working. Like what do you can't stand doing, you know, like, or what are people not enjoying about it, right? So we're going to learn that as you go through this experience. So the first thing I'm thinking is your ultimate goal is this idea of public speaking. You want to do more public speaking. So who needs this message that you have, sharing your story and sharing these tips? Who would need that? Well, people who are probably at perhaps women crisis shelters might need some of this work. Gynecologists, naturopaths, maybe an audience of people who had midwives or doulas, hospitals, things like that. So people who are perhaps even like magazines, you know, like parenting magazines, things like that, would be that those people would have the audiences of people who would need your work. So that's how you're kind of starting your process right now, where you're like, you're already emailing people like this and trying to get this information out. If you do it on, what I found, and you would know this being in the medical industry, is that the medical industry has to be so careful of how things are communicated, because they can't have a liability. You know, So it's like a fitness trainer has to carry insurance, and they have to say a disclaimer, like talk to your doctor before you do any of this stuff. Like they have to be very careful about it. But some things don't have to, like Parenting Magazine, some things like that, they're not going to get in trouble for publishing a tip about, how to heal your mental, emotional, physical body from a miscarriage through gratitude, right? So no one's going to come back to them and sue them because it didn't work or whatever. There's not. So those types of things, those types of conferences that are addressing those topics, those types of things I think would be really valuable for you to start to explore. What is missing when you pitch people like that is what is the ultimate, and perhaps you already have this nailed from the way that you've been communicating over email, but we want to kind of share like what is the ultimate transformation that happens on the other side of people implementing whatever it is they're implementing. So for you, we want to say this is eight strategies to, and I think the words you have, let me pull up that bio again, were a guide for trusting your body after miscarriage. But then when we first got on this, you said that the problem is that we're actually overcoming the sense of betrayal. It's that like, it's almost like living in a body that you don't trust, that you might hate, that you might feel betrayed by, and you cannot escape it. So what is the transformation on the other side of that? What does it look like? More than trust, yes, but can you describe it in a different way of like, what's it look like once I implement these 8 things?
So that's a good thing to be able to articulate for sure.
Yeah.
Sort of off the top of my head, it looks like less effort sort of to take care of yourself. And, trust is really the word that I keep coming back to because you feel like you can't trust your body. So learning to trust your body again, learning like through fitness, I really learned the strength of my body. I did not have that before.
That's
so
good.
I wrote that down to see if I can articulate that better.
Try to dive into it because that's going to be the real like promise. So you mentioned, I'm going to just tie this back to, because I know you'll continue to work even after we get off this call. So you mentioned like, why do I want to win this pageant? And most pageants will ask you that in paperwork, and most judges will ask that in interview. Some pageants will even ask it as an onstage question. And it shows up in different ways. It shows up as what legacy do you want to leave? It shows up as what do you want to accomplish during your year? Why are you the best contestant? Of all these contestants, why should we choose you? It shows up in a bunch of different ways. The answer is always a 3-step thing, okay? Promise, proof, and plan. Now, I have a whole training on this, Rebecca, in the free pageant course. I think you're a member of the free pageant course.
Yeah.
So there's a training in there right now on this promise, proof, and plan. So your promise is, what do you promise at the end of your year that is going to be achieved? So this is kind of like your goal. Like, what are you trying to do in the world? That's where this idea of like trusting your body, or like, what's that in the big picture transformation, So it might be like learning to love yourself again, or and through trusting your body, perhaps, And it sounds like there might be other things too, rather than just the body. There might be other aspects of trust, like trusting your trusting hope again. Like even allowing hope to even happen again, in your life. So while your platform and legacy project are very specific, as they should be, we also want you to be relatable to a large audience. So when you say, my goal for this pageant is to, like, here's my promise, then you say, here's the proof of how you can trust that I'm going to do that. Here's how I'm going to make good on this promise. So that's where you say, I've already, now here is where I love sharing, like name dropping like, oh, I've had the opportunity to speak with blah, 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 or I am the international spokesperson for da, 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 those types of things. You're adding credibility here, So for you, it could be, I've had the opportunity to already speak at 4 conferences to address this topic, this extremely important topic, to an audience of thousands of people, something like that. So you're proving you can do that big goal because you've done it before. Then the plan. Okay, so now they're like, okay, so you've done it 4 times before, but like what is the real plan of how this is gonna take place? That's the legacy project. That's the marketing plan where you're actually sharing like, okay, here's how it's gonna happen. So with that in mind, that plan part, I want to ask you, Rebecca, when you think of your contacts, the people in your life, you might even be involved in support groups yourself, or moms groups, or even perhaps when your kids were little, you may have even been in a part of mom groups. There's mom groups on Facebook and things like that. What are the things that you're a part of that you feel like you could get this message to? Do you have some on top of your mind?
The big one that comes to mind is Share. That's where I got the contact list, and they have a network of support groups throughout the country, and then maybe there's some other similar groups like that provide support and resources.
Okay, cool. So on this Share list that you have of all these resources and support groups around the country, how many support groups do you think there are across the country? Is it like hundreds, perhaps thousands? There's probably 100 in every state, perhaps. So, okay, so if that's the case, would it be possible for you to partner with one in every single state and do a speaking tour where you craft an expert talk on this message? You share your tips. Maybe you share 4 of them. Maybe you share 8 of them, whatever. But you share your tips. Maybe there's even an experience that's a part of it. Perhaps you create a workshop where you are able to, a 3-hour workshop where you're able to share these things, and maybe they even blend together. Like, so you've got exercise journal, eating healthy, gratitude. Perhaps there are things that can be grouped like physical, mental, emotional, social, or something like that. So then you can kind of say, okay, we're going to do, a 20 minutes. We're going to discuss this whole concept of physical, and then we're going to workshop it. We're going to put it into action. So how can you start doing it now? Like maybe it turns into a little like fitness thing for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, and then it turns into a healthy eating. Let's write a meal plan for a week or something like that, So if you were to create, I always recommend that people be able to talk about their platform, which is your guide to trusting your body again, in 30 seconds, 3 minutes, 3 hours, and 3 days. So your information would be able to, you could do a 3-day event on this information where each day was a different thing. You talk about your story at the beginning, then every hour on the hour you share a new thing. On day 2, we implement everything. On day 3, they write their action plans and everybody goes home, right? That's your 3-day event. You could do one of those, but you could also do a 3-hour event. You could do a 1-hour event. You could do a 30-minute event if you had to. You could talk about it for 3 minutes on stage when they ask you, why should you win this pageant? Okay? So this is what we want to be thinking. So what would happen if you, for example, were to, like, let's say, create a video of yourself and perhaps that bio, which you sent me, and maybe even the guide itself. And in the video, you say, hi, here's who I am, and you share your personal story, and you say, I want to share this message with your group. I'm preparing to create right now you could even do a virtual speaking tour.
Yeah.
And reach out to those people and say, you could even right now, Rebecca, are you in the virtual pageant summit right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so you could do something like that with all of those support groups. You could just invite everybody and see who shows up, and you're just teaching these tools, teach them straight into Facebook or create a Zoom. Zoom is becoming so popular now because everybody's needing to be online for everything. So you probably are aware of Zoom, but that's something that you could get people to log in. You could even record it, and now you've got a video of you actually teaching these methodologies, Then when the ban is lifted and we're all allowed to go outside again, then you could send that video or send an introduction video of yourself. It's people like to connect on video. It's easy. You mentioned that you're, in fact, I got a great strategy for that too. You mentioned that you are getting this email list and then you're trying to contact those people over email and they're not always getting back to you. There's this great online free software called Loom, LOOM.com. And you can create an account and sign in with your email account. Like I use my Gmail account is what I sign in with. And you can create a video of yourself right from there. So you don't have to have, you don't even have to record it on your phone or anything else. And you can then email a link to that video. And the link is loom.com/video/ and then it's a whole bunch of numbers. But you can then send that video over email. And when you send the video, it has a little preview at the beginning of the video. So imagine if you wrote down the name of the person that you are sending the email to, and you start your video like this. Hi, Sharon. It's so great to meet you. I wanted to send you this quick video because blah, 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 blah. Here's what I'm doing, and here's what it is, and you'll see my bio and my introduction video. I would love to talk with you. And then boom, you email that off. And then you're like, okay, let's do one for the next person. Hi, Eric, blah, 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 right? So now you can start, now when you send it, people are seeing you on camera with their name written out here. And you're like, hi, this is for you, and it's a personal email. You could make those quick and just, hi, I just wanted to email you real quick. Here's what I'm doing. Let me know if you've got any questions, And you don't have to do that for everyone. Maybe you do that for the big ones that you haven't heard back with. But you could do that to fill a online version of this. And perhaps that's even a great way to start because then you can test it out before you were to, spend money traveling or whatever. But as the future Mrs. America, you're going to be going to those states anyway. So you could create an entire speaking tour where you show up at those states, you teach your workshop, and it could be whatever it ends up being, 30 minutes, a full, whatever makes sense for that audience. How long would they normally meet for? Do they meet in person? Do they meet for a weekend together? Do they meet just once every Sunday or what? So it'll depend on what the group is structured like. But then you would be able to tailor your presentation for each one of them to get the message out. How does this feel for you?
I love the idea of I had been struggling with what to do. So creating a workshop, and there's one group leader just about an hour south of here in Massachusetts that I would be receptive to this and sort of helping me make sure that it's built in a way that she knows would be helpful.
Oh, I love that.
So,
great. Good. And what's the name of her can you say her organization name?
It's called Empty Arms Bereavement, and
Okay.
they are out of, it was Northampton. They moved their office, but somewhere near Northampton, Mass.
Okay. So when you are doing your promise, proof, and plan, your proof would be, I've already partnered with a local organization in blah, blah, blah,
Yep.
like you say that thing, and we've created a workshop, and together we've created a workshop. So I've already been delivering this. I'm, in constant communication with them, and we're going to make it the best. So you've got, that would be your proof that this is already moving forward, right? You want the pageant people to be like, she's going to do this with or without us. This
Yep.
train is moving, and so we want to be on her train, That's what you want them to think, not the other way around. Not like, I want to win because I want you guys to give me public speaking opportunities, right? Mm-hmm. So in your why, when you're writing that why, make your why be about you want to reach as many women as you can who have experienced loss. And really, this could eventually apply to so many other things. I'm even thinking about loss, yes, of a child, but perhaps also of a limb. Imagine amputees that have to, or that have an accident and they lose a limb. How then do you go about trusting your body again and learning your body in a whole new way? There's a market there that could probably also benefit from many of these things, right? So cool. So does this feel good for you? Does this feel like something you could start on?
Yes, it does.
Yay, good.
So the only other thing is how, like, if you're on stage and you have to introduce yourself.
Yes.
How sort of long is that typically? And I guess I'm really struggling with what the heck to put in there.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So an onstage introduction in most pageants, they typically have you say, "Hi, I am contestant number 14, Alicia Darby." That's like it. Now, sometimes they will say, "We want you to do a fun fact." I would recommend that fun fact be truly fun, lighthearted, happy, like that kind of thing. And fun fact, I learned to garden from my grandpa at age 8. Like that kind of thing, you know, like fun, lighthearted, easygoing. You want to also, in an introduction, if they give you time, like some pageants will give you time in an interview to introduce yourself. In that case, you want to introduce yourself and the things you want them to ask you about. So in this case, you are going to want them to ask you about being a nurse. You're going to want them to ask you about this project that you're working on. You're going to want them to ask you about probably like your home life and stuff and your kids and things like that. Maybe being into fitness, probably being a coach for your kids' teams. I think that would be something you'd be able to be lit up to share about. But perhaps you don't, maybe, I don't know, do you really want to talk about gardening? You know, so if you don't want to talk about a thing, if you don't want to talk about miscarriage, which it's going to come up for you anyway, but in your introduction, you choose the things that you say so that they will respond to those things first. Now, later in your introduction, you can say, well, actually, the reason that this is important to me is because I personally experienced a miscarriage and I had all the emotions that were related to that. And so that's why I'm passionate about helping others with this. But if you're like, well, let's not make that the very first question, then you can leave that out of your intro, right? Okay. So when people have found success with the Legacy Project is that they make it so much of a big deal that the judges can't not talk about it. Like they're like, this is crazy. Like, I can't believe you did this. Like, this is awesome. This is huge. This is larger than life. One way of doing that is by sharing I call it an anchor statistic. So an anchor statistic is the reason that it shows that there is a problem that you need to solve. So X amount of people have miscarriages every year. Of them, 34% lead to suicide or something. I made that up. But like, you get the idea. Like when you hear a stat like that, you're like, oh my gosh, wait, what? Someone needs to fix that problem. Now you show up, I've created this 8-step program or an 8, I feel like 8 is a lot. I wish it were like 3 or 4. You might be able to get it smaller because they're going to ask, they're going to be like, what are the 8 steps? And you're going to be like, journaling and gratitude. And I forget the third one. And so if you just have it like really tight and you don't have to give the details of like journaling, gratitude, whatever, those are the elements of it. But maybe the big ones are social, emotional, and physical or something like that, perhaps. And then, well, how physically? Oh, well, here, and here, So maybe you could consider that. That'll be easier on stage if they ask you like, if you were to win this pageant, what's something you would want to accomplish? Well, here's something I'm setting out to do. Here's my goal for my year. Here's what I've done in the past already. And here's my plan to make it happen. And then they're like, wow, that girl's got her act together, versus someone else that's like, I just want to be remembered as friendly and really responsible and be a great role model. And they're like, yeah, that's what the last girl said. You know what I'm saying? So you want yours to be like really juicy, I guess, like really vibrant. And then they'll be like so intrigued that they'll be like, wait, tell me more, So cool. Good. Awesome. Okay. So we talked about intro, we talked about platform, and then your platform, the way that you would describe it is in terms of the marketing plan. So whatever marketing plan you create, which could simply be, I'm partners with a group called Share, which shares a contact list of thousands of support groups around the nation. So I'm able to reach out to them. So far, I've reached out to this many people and like, this is my plan. I plan on going on a speaking tour, Yeah. And you could even start these things. Sorry, Rebecca, I'm like spinning. I'm like, oh, this is another good idea. This is another good idea. Here's another one. I was thinking, like, if you're into social media, which you might be, and it would be beneficial for you to do that. You could even do little mini posts, which you could take as excerpts from your guide. So you've got one on like gratitude. You probably have a really great sentence about gratitude already in your guide. You could turn that into a quote that you create on Canva or something and post it on Instagram. You could also do a live video where you're talking just deeply about that one topic. You could also take a photo of you doing the thing, whether it's fitness or this or that or this or that. Like maybe put all those things on a sticky note so you have it on your mirror. And then every time you do those things, when you sit down to journal, just take a quick snap of it and say like, finally getting my journal time in today. It feels so good. And start posting those things so that people know that that's what you stand for, that this is her brand. And that will even help you book speaking gigs too down the road.
Okay.
Yeah.
This has been super helpful. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. My pleasure. My pleasure. Well, keep me posted. Okay. Let me know how it goes. Let me know if there's any other ideas that you need, and we'll see what we can whip up. Ooh, wasn't that good stuff? Oh, I hope you learned so much from her. I know I had so much fun doing this strategy call with her, as we usually do. It's fun. So 2 things. If you need to hear more of these strategy sessions, because they're so good and you can learn so much from them, then just search strategy sessions, because I have a few more clients that also agreed to be recorded. So you'll be able to look at the behind the scenes of their calls as well. And then if you are ready to schedule your strategy session, you can go to winapageant.com/coaching. That's going to take you to my calendar so you can see what appointments are available and when you can book yours. And you'll also see pricing options there, which types of calls are available and how much to each of them cost. And you can book your call directly from there. I cannot wait to work with you. Head over to winapageant.com/coaching to check it out. I'll see you next time.